Hi, I'm Kim Weiland, and welcome to this week's writing Q&A video. This week's question is from Weiland, and this is in response to a post and podcast that I had on my website, helping writers become authors, a few weeks ago. It was about Lord of the Rings and the power of fiction that goes there and back again by being willing to explore the depths of the human experience through emotions like despair. So the question asks, I would like to ask you this one thing about your recent blog post about despair versus hope. And you already pointed to some ways of not doing it the wrong way anyway. But how can any of us who have never really experienced personal despair describe or transcribe that to others? I went there in my own way long ago, but that was my subjective experience after all. Do you feel there is a common feeling of human decency that we will all tap into when we read moving novels or stories? So this is an interesting question, and I've received a few like it, and I think I'll probably be doing a full post and podcast probably after the new year, but about how we can access these deep emotions in our stories. But for today, my short answer is simply yes. I do think that we can access a universal experience of these deep emotions in our stories. And I think one of the primary ways we do this is simply through our own subjective experiences. I think that even though our experiences are very personal and subjective to us, there is still a common resonance that comes through in fiction and in our ability to communicate from human to human in ways that deeply tap and touch and bring out the subjectivity of someone else's experience. I remember reading quite a while ago, I can't remember who said it, but I loved it. It was the idea that when we read something and there's this immediate sense of recognition of like, oh, and it feels like something new, like it's something, an idea or an experience that maybe we hadn't encountered before. And yet there's this sensation that it doesn't feel like we have learned something new. It feels like we've remembered something that we've always known. And so I think that's sort of an example of one person's subjectivity connecting with another person's subjectivity. And ultimately, I always say, like, the reader is your co-writer. So when a reader has a really good experience with a book, or a viewer has a really powerful experience with a visual media like TV or movies, it's not just because of the objective experience that's being shared by the writer in the actual story. It's because it's like connected with and tapped into something subjective in that person's own experience. And I think the great pieces of fiction, the ones that become pulp culture or classics that we've all heard of and that have inspired this kind of reaction kind of across the board from a wide swath of people and audience members, clearly it is because the author was able to tap something that is pretty universal. But at the same time, each person who's responded to it is also responding from the depth of their own subjectivity. And I think that's important to know about, because what it means is that we can then use that subjectivity in the actual writing of it as we are writing and working on stories like this. Because really, it's our subjectivity, it's our ability to go to that place that's very personal for us, that's very authentic, that's willing to go into the depths of our own experience and kind of tap something that is the result of our own experiences, but is also something much deeper and more primal that we can all share in. And then bringing that out through the subjectivity of our own experiences and sharing that is that what allows that to really connect with readers and viewers. So I think that there's nothing wrong with the subjectivity of an author's experience. That really, that's where it's at. And that if you're going to truly connect with a reader, yes, you're going to be aware of the objective experiences that are happening. But what's really potent is always your connection, your relationship to that larger objective whole. And I think ultimately, how do you do that? If you're trying to write about something that you don't personally have experience about, and I'm going to share a video about this next week, I think, the simplest way to do that, I think, is through fiction, because fiction is this amazing kind of portal through which we can explore experiences and emotions that maybe we haven't yet tapped or don't want to tap, in our actual lives. But we get to explore things that are pleasurable, like falling in love. We get to explore things that are painful, like grief, in sort of this safe, contained container. But it's also like, I think there's a reason like we ask questions like this, because we call it a safe container, and yet anything that allows us to truly go there and tap these emotions has the potential to deeply affect us, to trigger those emotions at a level that can inspire deep transformation. And that's not something that any of us, I think deep down we all know we don't go to that lightly. But I do believe that we all come into the world with something that is important about our subjective experience, that we are here to contribute to the overall objective collective. I like the idea that truth is infinite, and as an infinite concept, it's not something that our finite brains can grasp in its entirety. But each of us has the ability to access a finite piece of that truth, a perspective on it. And so when we're able to honestly share that in our own writings or in our own lives, and then bring it together with all the pieces of everyone else's lives and with the truths that they're able to bring, then together we are able to see a much bigger swath of that truth than we would be on our own. So our subjective experiences are extremely important. And I do believe that one of the highest challenges and responsibilities of an artist is to be true to that subjectivity, and to be willing to go there, to mine the depths of your own personal, subjective, individual experience, and bring that out into your art so that it can then resonate with and tap into and join with the subjective experiences of other people, because that's where the magic happens. So I hope that's interesting and helpful. I'll be touching on related topic in next week's video, and then like I said, I do plan that I think that I will probably do a full-fledged post and podcast about this after the first of the year, so you can keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, if you'd like to connect with me and make sure you stay up to date with all the content I produce, whether it's these videos or my weekly blog and podcast, as well as other email messages and such, my email list is the best way to do that, and you can sign up at my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And I will see you again next week.